Hello and welcome to Del Mar. I'm Steve Anderson, standing alongside of Marcus Hersh, and we're here this morning to discuss the Breeders' Cup Friday program, particularly the two-year-old races, which have runners in the juvenile fillies turf and juvenile turf from Europe. We got 5 in the juvenile fillies turf and 6 in the juvenile turf. It's a good group. Given an overview, it looks like they're both competitive groups that can challenge the American runners, wouldn't you say?
Oh, definitely. I think the word must have gotten out overseas that the American two-year-old turf horses were not looking especially stellar this year. I mean, the colt in particular, I mean, there have been a couple faster filly performances like Rushing Fall for Chad Brown, but on the whole, it's a really down year. And I mean, you know, Steve, the European two-year-olds are always tough in these races, but I think they could be especially so this year.
Let's take a quick look at the juvenile fillies turf. And the conversation really has to start with Happily, trained by Aidan O'Brien. She's a 2-time Grade 1 winner. She won the Moiglar Stud Stakes at 7 furlongs at the Curragh in September and came back to beat males in the Group 1 Jean-Luc Lagardère Stakes at Chantilly over a mile on October 1st. Boy, if she comes back to that form, that's going to be very tough for like the Rushing Falls or the significant forms of Chad Brown's to beat. Did you pick Happily?
No.
No, neither
but
did I.
I do. I mean, you have to use her.
Yes.
I think you absolutely have to use her. I talked to Ryan Moore for a little while just about various things this morning, and he said he thinks she might be an Oaks horse, which is, I mean, and he said also, and this is pretty clear, she's clearly the best 2-year-old filly they've ever brought over. Aidan O'Brien has brought over to these races, which you can see on the form. Yeah. So, I mean, him saying that she's an Oaks horse strikes me in 2 ways, Steve. First, it confirms what we know, that she's got a ton of quality. I mean, she's really, really talented and seems to have an incredible amount of class. But if she's that kind of horse to go a mile and a half, will she be suited to a tight mile at Del Mar?
On firm turf, yeah.
Yeah, maybe not. She might not be.
That's interesting. And it's notable that Aidan O'Brien has not won this race. He was second 2 years ago with Alice Springs, but he's still waiting for that first winner.
Yeah, I think that's random, kind of. Do you think there's something to it? I just think it's a matter of time, probably.
He's tried it 3 or 4 times, so now I'm beginning to wonder if a trend is emerging a little bit.
Possible, but I can't remember seeing any of his horses look as good as these two in the spot. You know, the other horse, September, that's the one I picked. I think she's really good too. If you look through the entirety of her form, you don't find a lot of flaws. And she's a trip horse because you probably watched the race, the Fillies Mile at Newmarket. She got in all kinds of trouble. She lost by a zot, as they say. And I think she was the best horse in that race. I think she will like going a mile at Del Mar. I'm more confident that she'll like it than Happily, but she does have kind of a tough outside draw.
Let's also remember Newmarket has an uphill finish, so stamina won't be a problem at all for September, who's going to go on a fast mile here. The 3 other runners are Now You're Talking, trained by Aidan O'Brien's son Joseph. That one's still a maiden and probably will still be a maiden on Friday evening. Also, the runners include Madeline, who is 3rd in the Sheveley Park Stakes behind Aidan O'Brien's Clemmy, and also a very interesting filly called Juliet Capulet, trained by John Gosden, to be ridden by Frankie Dettori. Those cats have had a pretty good last 5 weeks, winning the Arc and the
champion, yeah.
But Juliet Capulet was drawn in post 13. Yeah. That kind of discouraged me because I really wanted to kind of put her in my selections until then.
Right. I feel the same way. I think of the non-O'Brien, she's the one that easily interests me the most. She beat Capla Temptress, who won at Woodbine, and some people fancy that horse.
Yes.
I don't necessarily, but I don't think she's. I think the other 2 horses, September and Happily, are probably better than she is. So she would need everything to go right. So she doesn't have the margin of error to overcome, the sorts of difficulties that you often find with that kind of draw. So she could get up for a place, but that'd be the high water mark as far as I can see.
Concluding thought then: September is the filly to beat among the Europeans with respect to Happily.
I mean, I don't know if I'd phrase it like that. I think she's maybe better value and has a chance, even if she's not inherently as good, she maybe could suit the conditions a little more. And I think you get a little extra bang because it's not Ryan Moore, it's the B team.
Yep.
And she had the trip from last time. I mean, do you think she has a decent chance?
I do. In fact, I think if she'd won this Fillies Mile, the conversation might have be a little bit different. That dirty, rotten nose she got beaten does sort of change the outlook ever so slightly. Yeah. And I agree with your point of view on the form of a value pick as well. Yeah, we go to the juvenile turf now, where there's a half a dozen to talk about, and they are a varying group between horses that seem like they belong here and horses that are kind of surprising to see they're involved, to be quite honest.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Thank you. The one who really kind of catches the eye in terms of form, and he looks nice physically too this week. Massar, owned by Godolphin, trained by Charlie Appleby. Massar was third behind Happily in the Jean-Luc Lagardère. He won the Solario Stakes at Sandown Park in south of London in over 7 furlongs in his preceding start. A lot to like about that colt, I think. Do you agree?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that as well.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't mind being out on my own island, but I definitely respect your knowledge of these overseas horses, and I have the same feeling about Massar. To me, he's my top selection in the race, and I wouldn't say I have a huge amount of confidence. How could you? 14 of them lining up, it's going to be a lot of luck will be involved, but I think that's one of the things there is to like about him. He's not going to be on the lead, but he strikes me as an athletic handy type who, if he gets a decent break, can be in the second flight maybe. If you go back and watch his race at Sandown, he worked out a really nice trip. And what struck me maybe most about that, well, two things. When they asked him to run, he had a bit, he really picked up immediately. He had that push button sort of acceleration you really like to see. And then he finished off the race with a nice sustained run too. I just don't hold the race in France against him because they said all along, this is a firm turf sort of horse. That's why they took him out of the Racing Post Trophy to come here and get firm ground. And it was definitely not firm at Chantilly that day. And I think he just ran out of steam. It's a 3 furlong straightaway or so. They went running a long way out. And I just think it didn't really suit him. I think he's better than that.
If I could add to your point of view on Sandown, that has a pesky uphill finish. So for you to come away with the impression that he had a sustained run at the wire, he's climbing ever so slightly. It's not like Newmarket, it's not like Cheltenham or something like that, but it's just enough to test a horse's stamina. And over 7/8, that translates well to a mile here.
I think I don't worry about the distance for him at all. Yeah, I think he's going to see it out. I think he's going to be a fair price too.
I think the second most attractive runner in the juvenile turf among the European-based is called James Garfield, trained by George Scott. He's a rookie trainer. He's worked for Lady Elizabeth Cecil. He worked out here in California briefly for Simon Callahan and for Eddie Keneally in the last few years. So he's had a good apprenticeship in regards to working for leading stables worldwide. And he's brought a horse called James Garfield, who was second in the Acomb Stakes and then came back to win the Mill Reef Stakes at Newbury in September. And he's on. Frankie Dettori actually rode that horse in the Acomb and got off of him and told Scott, "We're coming to California." I think that horse has a chance to do something. I do.
Yeah, I'm seeing it the same way as you. He's the other one I'm taking seriously, for better or for worse, in the race. I do prefer Massar, but I could definitely see him. I guess the reason I prefer Massar is he's been around the bend, and even though he lost the race in France, he did step up to the highest level in that race. James Garfield, there's the assumption that he's going to be okay on the turn and that he'll stay, but neither is necessarily guaranteed. I mean, Mr. Scott, and speaking to him, he's pegging a lot of his hopes on the fact he's out of a De Lamy mare, and he's got the pedigree, but he's not entirely certain that, that he's going to love a mile. And to see him today, he looks the type that could suit this course and kind of a mile with a short stretch. He looks... He's kind of like a halfback type, and he looks athletic enough, speedy enough, but not totally sprinty at all.
Anyway, I got 4 others here, and we're kind of got to go through them a little more quickly. And I'm just kind of curious to hear what you think. Mendelssohn, who's 50-1, second place finisher in the Dewhurst Stakes for Aidan O'Brien. He was a $3 million yearling at Keeneland. Hasn't won graded stakes yet. Do you give him a group stakes yet? Do you give him any chance at all?
I give him a chance, but I don't like him especially.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the one hole. He's going to have to do a lot of things right, and the whole problem with him is he's done a lot of things wrong so far. They added blinkers to him. He's struggled. I mean, he was too keen last time. I think he's going to come out running and show a little bit of speed. Would it shock me if he won? No, but you mentioned $3 million. There's a good reason to test the horse in a race like this, even if you don't think he's very good, right? I mean, I think the motivation for coming here, might lie outside of, we really think he's going to win.
Right. Sands of Mali won the Group 2 Gimcrack Stakes at York in August. Was 12th in the Middle Park. It looks to me kind of like a throwout.
I'm not throwing him out. I'm throwing Raja Singh out, and I mean, I've read a couple, handicapping analysis opinions liking Beckford. I have not seen a single thing to make me think he can contend. And then watching him today, Steve, he looks like a little sprinter to me.
Yeah, well, he was, and a very good one when he won the Railway Stakes in Ireland. Early season, and then he's lost 3 straight Group 1 races, so there's a little bit of a flaw there. Interestingly, he's trained by Gordon Elliott, who's a star jump trainer in England and Ireland. He's won the Grand National and a lot of those big races. This is his first trip to California, he said today, and his first Breeders' Cup runner, of course. So he's an
good luck to
horse.
him.
Good luck to him is right, and so that's kind of that. So we're looking really with anticipation at watching horses such as Happily in September in the Juvenile fillies turf, and we're looking with interest at runners such as Massar and James Garfield in the Juvenile turf. So I'm Steve Anderson, standing alongside of Marcus Hersh. We're the team that provide the international coverage for the Daily Racing Forum from points afar, from Hong Kong to Dubai, from Australia to Europe. So we're glad you could join us today, and we wish you luck on Friday at the big Breeders' Cup races at Del Mar.